these mothers would come up to him and say, like,
motherfucker!
So he's probably, surely, he's so stupid to think that all autistic people cannot use a toilet. Like, you must know that.
Well, Holly, if I may, and I'll respond.
Holly, if I may, I am an elite young intellectual homosexual.
Office, after the statements that he made that were so controversial to many autism rights communities, his office said that he was discussing those that were affected and/or, keyword and/or, severely affected by autism. So because of that, that means that not only was he talking about people who have severe autism, he was talking about those who have autism in general. So because his office came out with that after, and usually, if I'm not wrong, if it's going through an office like that, it's with representation.
I'm sorry, you're, like, I am...
Victoria, he's literally in the middle of talking. You hear his voice.
I'm sorry, but...
Stop. Just stop.
Like...
No, stop. You hear his voice.
You're
not a moderator. You don't have the right to interrupt. It's rude.
Marshall, you're an asshole, and I don't...
Yes, I am being an asshole because you know better than to interrupt. You were a grown woman whose parents taught them it was rude to interrupt people in the middle of sentences, and you're doing it now.
The measles outbreak happened.
No, Victoria, Christian was talking, not you. Christian, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just move on to the second one.
No one puts young Elvis in the corner, Christian.
Yeah, Scott. Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you. I'll move on to the second one, Holly. Let's see. So when he was talking about COVID-19, like ethnically targeting, he was at a private dinner in New York in July of 2023, and he was discussing bioweapons research. And he said, quote, "There is an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people, and the people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people." And he also used this same argument later, I think it was actually a year or two back, at a related conference yet again. It wasn't a private dinner, like it was spoken of there, but it was press released. And he went on to say some major things after that, but that's the main quote that we got from that based on the context. So, yeah, I mean, am I to say that, RFK, is like a terrible person? Well, I mean, that's up to the interpretation, but these are things with context that we know he said and does have some sort of connection or belief to, and because of that, like I said earlier, I think he's a fucking...
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, that does sound pretty bizarre. I'll give you that. I don't have any commentary on it.
And again, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just interpreting it wrong, but this was like a press release from a private dinner with like many high-ranking officials. And when they, just a quick little context and then I'll be done, when they actually ran tests regarding his statement that was later coming out, they didn't find anything that would support that argument or statement for COVID-19 protecting or going most for Caucasian or black people.
Rude and annoying.
Who are you talking to, Marshall?
Wait, what?
Oh, I didn't realize my mic was open. I was dictating a message. I'm sorry. It didn't have anything to do with you. It had to do with Victoria. I was dictating a message. No. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Hey, hold on. I'm sorry. I lost my composure for a minute. Bless you, Marshall. Bless you, Marshall. But, I mean, when they ran, like, tests and, like, different types of ways to be able to, like, find this information out to see if it's true or not, they didn't really find anything conclusive. They didn't give a yes or no answer. They just said it wasn't conclusive. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting stuff. I mean, we could go down the list of the things RFK has said and whether they're good or bad, but these are just a couple that have sparked my interest. And I've been like, whoa, can we go back real quick? Can we back?
And if you want things that are or are not taken out of context, and I'll do my best to do this really quickly, and again, I'm on ChatGPT, but it's giving the sources multiple interviews, also at the 2025 HHS confirmation hearing, autism. More than 2 decades
For
of
the
research involving children's
YouTube moderators, fact checkers,
Next, quote
and
time,
compliance
is it
team,
pronounced
this is a podcast discussing the controversy surrounding Robert F. Kennedy for context purposes. I'm a journalist reporting from ChicagoNewsIncorporated.com, a subdivision of JohnKitoverNews.com. So if there's any medical misinformation being identified in this video, I have put it into context.
Vaccines are the only medical products that not safety tested before licensing. That's on the Joe Rogan Experience and Fox News interviews. Again, vaccines are the only medical products not safety tested. That is false. Safety tested before licensing. That also is false. Next, no vaccine has ever been tested against a true placebo. No vaccine has ever been tested against a true placebo. That is incorrect as well.
I've been in trials where vaccine. I was in a vaccine trial where it was placebo test.
Exactly. Next, on the Lex Friedman podcast, no vaccine is safe and effective. He said that on the Lex Friedman podcast, although it was later disputed that he actually said that. Maybe he claims it was taken out of context as well. Next, COVID-19 vaccines were the deadliest vaccine ever made. Senate confirmation hearing. He claims it was the deadliest vaccine ever made. Senate confirmation hearing. Next, nobody knows how many lives COVID vaccines saved at the Senate testimony hearing. Okay? Multiple peer-reviewed analysts estimate millions of deaths were prevented worldwide. Next, COVID-19 may have been ethnically targeted to spare Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people.
Like me!
Christian.
It was safer for me than other people. That's what that's saying, right? It was safer for me. The COVID-19 vaccine from Pfizer was safer for this genetic model.
The measles vaccine causes all the illnesses of measles. That was on the Sean Hannity interview. The measles vaccine causes all the measles. No, I'm sorry. The dude is a psycho wacko, and although some stuff may be taken out of context, that still doesn't obfuscate the fact the dude is a psycho wacko.
Make RFK great again.
I still love him.
And that's okay. You can love him a long time. I got no problem with that at all.
No, and you know what? There's a lot of different people that I love. I love the other Kennedy, Senator Kennedy. I love that guy. He's a funny guy. There's a lot of different people I love. And if you want to keep that opinion, please do.
Yeah, in fact, speaking of the Kennedys, haven't the entire rest of the Kennedy family basically wrote off RFK? Didn't they basically disown him? Yeah. So essentially, a couple of days ago, and I think it might have been this week actually, Senator Kennedy, the blue, the liberal,
the guy who philandered, drove off the bridge.
He essentially stated
that was Ted Kennedy. He's dead, sir. The name of the bridge.
Oh, okay, sorry, man.
That was Chappaquiddick, and he's dead.
Yeah, and essentially he was talking about how RFK's suggestions and general statements directed at autism and other controversial topics are completely stupid. And I think he put that out on social media pretty recently, and if he did not, he's definitely said it on an interview, because I've heard him on CNN 5,000 fucking times, and I never get his voice out of my head.
And by the way, when you ask Holly, and I'm glad you asked this, what type of room this is a Reverend Scott room. Absolutely.
Absolutely. One, we started eons ago. I started this morning, and it's gone all day, basically.
Yeah, I think we're 9 o'clock, maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it was early in the morning.
I wish it would does it give you, like, start time and...
length of duration or something?
No, but if I was on club deck, right now, I could see how many people. But I don't know how to do that on the app.
No, there's no way to do it on the app.
Oh, Scott, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So, when you listen to like RFK, what's the first thought that pops in your head?
Well, I don't know. Like listening to that throat is really grainy. I mean, his voice is really unusual. So I always think, does he have throat cancer or something? But
oh, thank you. I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I do. Every time I will tell you though. I do like. I'm a fitness guy, so I like his fitness and as I age, I find him inspiring because the guy's in really good shape for a guy his age. I mean, it's like really, really. I mean, I'm sure he's some sort of
too good shape.
Yeah, I don't think he's on steroids, but he probably is on some sort of.
That's not natural. But, I don't know. It just when I see a picture of him without his shirt on, it's repulsive.
But you can do stuff though well into his age.
Do you think he spends that many hours a day, given his schedule, in the gym?
Forget about breakfast cereal. I think RFK should have a red warning on him. Might be cancerous.
I think before he got into the cabinet, he did. Yeah, I mean, I think the guy's worked out all the time. He's a fitness junkie. So I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think his views are a little eccentric on certain vaccine stuff. I think he would have been a good EPA person, but he probably would have had to be appointed by a Democrat, right? I mean, he's been a Democrat most of his life. His environmental views are more regulatory, probably too regular. At least they were. I don't know what they are now, but I don't know if they've changed since he's been in the administration, but. You know, yeah, I agree with what Steve said. He's much more qualified, I think, to be EPA director. But, you know, I mean, Trump rewards loyalty. I mean, Trump, sometimes. But, yeah, I mean...
He did it with Pence.
He didn't with Pence, and he didn't with Giuliani. That's the thing. That really surprised me that Giuliani didn't get more of a reward, like a cabinet spot, because Giuliani in 2016 carried so much water for Trump, man. I mean, that guy really... really sold himself, over to the Trump campaign as far as a surrogate and supporter. And he did not, I don't think Giuliani was treated that well for a guy that really, was really a key, I think, advocate. But
you shouldn't allow yourself to be filmed on a bed.
Yeah, right, Sasha. But what do you think exactly?
He was also had a lot of heat on him dealing with the election situation, right? He was involved in the whole Georgia elections.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that was part of it too.
Oh, and Scott, I got one last question for you.
Absolutely, buddy. Anything for young Elvis. They'd say, stop Clubhouse. I like to think I was in on the ground floor when the star was rising. It's amazing.
No, thank you, and yeah, I mean the show is up and coming this upcoming weekend, so it's fantastic. But when you go to vote in the 2028 election, and you have the choice between Gavin Newsom and you have G.D. Vance or Ivanka Trump, whoever's running, I don't really know. Or I've heard a lot of different, Republicans step up to the plate. Who are you voting for? Because I think at this point it's like shit versus shit, and it's like we have no good candidate. So who are you going to vote for?
Look, I will likely vote for the Democratic nominee, but I'd like to see that nominee be. My governor is great, Josh Shapiro. I think he would be a really great.
Never make it through the process.
Yeah. I like Rahm Emanuel.
He won't make it through the process.
I mean, somebody that would make it through the process.
That's tough. That's tough, right?
I don't think Shapiro's running. He doesn't even have a war chest. A lot of people were citing Gretchen Whitmer, and I think she would be a strong candidate on the Democrat side. However, ever since that FBI sting operation in which they were touting as she was being kidnapped, and then the fallout from that, she's been very much quiet and hasn't accumulated a massive war chest. They keep throwing her name up there, but she hasn't come out, and in fact, she said the opposite, and she hasn't built a war chest. The only one that's done it is what's his name out of Pritzker, and then yes, and then Newsom.
Well, Pritzker just writes a check to himself.
I think Newsom will be a weak candidate. I think Kamala Harris showed us that for Democrats, somebody that went statewide in California, that doesn't mean much, I don't think. I mean, Whitmer, I agree, before the FBI, yeah, it would have been stronger. I think anybody from a swing state, that's why I like Shapiro as a swing state governor, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who could get the nomination.
But Shapiro couldn't deliver Pennsylvania for Kamala. That's where I'm saying he's not going to make it through. Like, even he probably won't make it through.
It wasn't that he couldn't deliver. Kamala couldn't deliver Pennsylvania for Kamala. She was a weaker candidate. Like, all the swing states went for the opposite candidate. I don't think that was Shapiro.
One of the problems she had, the Philadelphia Democratic chair had been worked with by every Democratic campaign since Bill Clinton. Her campaign never even bothered to pick up the phone and call the man. He didn't even get a phone call to say, hey, we're coming through the city, we really need your help to set up a rally. Right? Like, I've got to go to this Ken Paxton thing, and I'm not a Ken Paxton fan. But Ken Paxton's staff has coordinated with the local GOP, they've coordinated with the young people's groups, they've coordinated with everybody and their mother. Right? Because that's what you do when you come into a town for a rally. I mean, she shot herself in the foot like it was going out of style.
Josh Shapiro couldn't deliver for her if she wasn't even going to put in an effort.
Well, and I think, yeah, go ahead, Yakov, Paul.
No, the voters, voted with their pocketbook. It was, if you looked at the polling 2 weeks out, you looked at who you're going to vote for, it said one thing, very, very tight race. But if you looked at 2 weeks out, even I think 3 or 4 weeks out, is the country, headed in the right direction, 60-40 for Trump. And that's a great placeholder question, because if the country is going in the right direction, people tend to vote for the party that's in power. If the country is not going in the right direction, then they tend to reward the other party. So Pennsylvania voted by their pocketbooks, and what they felt was the future. They didn't vote because Josh Shapiro didn't deliver, in my opinion.
And that's a very great point. But I think another great point is that in general, Kamala was thrown under the bus by her own party. Biden was pushed out in late June, and they said, Kamala, take over and win this fucking election with limited funding, with limited advertising, with basically no space to be able to share any policies that she wanted to give, which, by the way...
Didn't she have like $1 billion at her hand?
She did not.
I thought she had a boatload of money.
Essentially what happened with that is that all of that money was designated to the Democratic advertising and media staff, and for like rallies and different types of stuff like that needed to be funded, and they did not do shit with it. So I'm gonna be honest, she was thrown under the bus by her own party. That's why she lost the election, and I think that if she runs again in this upcoming election, which she probably won't, I think that there's a better chance, I'll say better chance, that she's able to win and possibly become president. I don't know, necessarily what the odds are with that, but I think she'd have a lot better chance if she had more time up ahead, which a lot of the other candidates did, like Trumpy.
So I'll say this: the Democrats solved their Kamala problem. She was always a problem, including in the Senate. Outside, she sounded good on a soundbite with her 15 minutes of fame, but she was like one of the highest rated no-show votes. She was one of the most missed meetings and things along those lines. So she had a lot of problems with it, and they had a Kamala problem because she was tied to the money from the Biden-Harris campaign. She was the only one that could actually obtain those funds. So in order to move her out of the way, because she was like, I'm the anointed queen, they basically did what you said, Christian. They threw her under the bus and said, that's it. From optics-wise, she did raise a boatload of money, like a massive amount in a short time frame. It was pretty awe-inspiring. if she runs again, she won't win. She won't get past the first primary. And the main reason is the demographics that don't enjoy her. She catered to, in Michigan, she catered to, the Democrats have a Palestinian issue. It's a controversial topic. I get it. People feel one way or the other about it. It doesn't matter. But optically, America is not in full-throated support of, catering to Muslims. It is what it is. And so now, when she went to Pennsylvania, she said the opposite thing to kind of cater in front of Jewish people. And that hurt her so profoundly that you watch those big donors start to disappear, and they just didn't give to anybody else. They stayed home.
Right. The donors who weren't Jewish?
Donors that were Jewish. And then,
what did she say to I missed that part.
So in Michigan, she went pro-Palestine, and then she basically went to, and then Pennsylvania, she went pro-Israel. So you can't have a candidate. Yeah, she couldn't do that, especially at that time frame. That was a huge blow to her, because even the Muslims stayed home in Michigan. They were like, screw this, no. So she offended both sides, which cost her.
Didn't the Muslims vote for Trump?
Yeah.
Which is actually a pretty funny phenomenon when you think about it.
Yeah, and so, it's kind of weird to hear, the idea that she could somehow, pull that out. She's going to be tied to Biden's campaign. And let's be honest, Democrats themselves have moved on. They don't want her. They don't want him. They don't want the legacy. Only on Clubhouse do you hear this cheering, but in the streets, they don't want it. And you're seeing a more populist separatist movement in the country of where they're really, trying to find something new. They're willing to throw everything at the wall and see if it sticks, but they don't want they don't even want Bernie anymore. You just don't see that effect.
She also had the handicap of not running as long as Trump. Trump ran the whole cycle. She only ran from June to, or maybe early July, late June, whatever you want to call it. By the time she got up to steam from July to November. So she was handicapped by time, too.
I'll say she was impressive in the beginning, but I think as time went on, Diakov, I think she would have plummeted. I think it would have actually been worse for her. I mean, it plummeted itself, but if you watch that trajectory, she rose really fast and high. She had that honeymoon period.
Yeah, because people were couldn't believe that Joe Biden was still in the race. It was, to be honest, it was sad what the Democrats were doing to him, and they were like, "Oh, thank God he's out. Okay, let's rally around her."
But I mean, when they did that rally, a couple of things came apparent. And you're seeing this in even with my Democrat counterparts that talk I talk at RNC areas a lot, and they don't really listen anymore because they're, well, what do we do with Trump? And I'm like, you better figure it out because Trump's gone after this term, and MAGA's going to go with him. Just like the Tea Party movement went, it's going to fade, and then you're going to have to build the next coalition. You better figure out what you're going to do before the Democrats come up with their big wave, because you're going to get someone with a charismatic populist figure like Clinton, who's going to come in on the Democrat side, and he's going to push his agenda over. And if he's more moderate and caters to that middle, he's going to have really strong legs. You're not going to win anything. Just fortunately for the Republicans, they don't have anyone. I think their best shot is Rubio, and I think Rubio takes it.
I'm already voting for Rubio. That's how confident I am. Just like about Vance, he just looks angry all the time. To be honest, when Rubio was floated as Secretary of State, I was like, what? He has no diplomatic experience. He was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and he had some sort of thing, but not as a diplomat. But he has knocked the ball out of the park. I have to say, I'm very impressive with him.
I think he's the prince in waiting. And he's basically realigned. He's got an opportunity for a unique. He's realigned geopolitics to serve under his his kind of purview, and Trump has allowed him to take the lead on that, which is unusual for a president. Like, you don't see that too often. Kinzinger was one. There's a few others that have been able to do it, but no one's done it in a long time except for him, and he's got a shot to just walk into the White House with geopolitics, like the world order stacked in the way he wants it, moving at the beat that he wants. And I think the rest of the world is recognizing that he's probably the heir apparent, and they're trying to work around or trying to work with him. In regards to what he is going to do, because again, the rest of the world is watching our elections and saying who's going to be the next.
I agree. I need to take a shower. I don't know if you want to. I'm gonna like close this down.
Yeah, that's fine. Close it down. I'll see you out there later, Yakov.
What?
I'll see you later.
Yeah. Take care. It's nice. Always nice chatting with you. Bye.
Bye.
2 books? I thought I only kept 1.
So who would believe to benefit his family from that argument as well? I think if we're going to say he's a madman, we can't say that he's deliberately manipulating the markets. And if we're going to say that he's deliberately manipulating the markets, we can't say that he's a madman. You have to decide. If you're going to be critical of the president, you got to decide. I don't know whether any of us are in a position to. Well, what other people said, there's this whole Christian apologist that used to say, don't have an outcome, just saying Jesus is a good guy. He used to say he's either a liar, he's either a lunatic, the rage guy thinks he's God, or he's the Lord. But maybe you have to learn the word. You got to choose from either a liar, a lunatic, or a man Jesus Christ of the lunatic. Well, Scott, I think you and I, and maybe Marshall to a degree, we need to sit back and listen to what other people say to maybe help us form a more informed opinion of the question. So let's move on to the folks who are in queue or in trust. Sorry, I am.
Gary, I think that when we look at this particular topic, we have to see that Trump does seem to be lacking any sort of direction because he shifts, his opinion shifts. Like any given day, his opinion will shift. It's from one issue to another, and it's the idea that he might be doing something that would benefit his family, I think is reasonable to discern based on the fact that the stock markets rise and fall based on the timing of his tweet. He usually tweets right before the markets open on the East Coast. There's that. I think that it's unreasonable that U.S. taxpayers have to believe that we are burdened with the idea of trying to identify the misuse of government resources. Which is something that will have to be calculated after
Neurodivergent.
either dies or, I don't know, ends his career. One or the other. But we are going to be taxed with the heavy duty of actually like going through and combing through with a fine-tooth comb of all of his text, tweets, possession. That's what
I've often said, just that I may agree with you on this, I've often said that if I had an opportunity to time travel backward or forward, where would I go? And at this point in time in history, I'd like to go forward and see how the historians of the future write about what we're going through today.
Yep. Yeah.
And then I come back and I host a show on that.
I think.
And I bet you if I hosted a show on that, we'd go viral.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think that it would be good if it wasn't viral and instead would just be like a learning lesson of this is where we should have had our government in place so that the tactics that were deployed under Trump's second term isn't available to anyone else. That would be like the winning.
Well, I mean, it would be educational if I was able to go forward in time and come back and tell you all what the future you have to say about today and how it how. Of course, it did not continue this potential. I got to work that out with a certain professor who has a DeLorean. But I think I can figure that out. I'll let you know.
Ask him, please, first. Thank you. I'll go back in a couple minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc. Run that for me, Doc. Adam, followed by Dave. Adam.
I think this is just kind of Trump's personality. I think he thinks it keeps people kind of guessing as to what he's going to do and give leverage in some situations that may work. I think the problem he faces now is that he's picked a fight with people who like to fight. Like Koreans like to fight forever. And he picked the fight in such a way that he does not have the backing of the United
Oh, you're breaking up there, Adam. You're under the water.
States. Like to sleep on a Friday night, and
on.
It sounded like you had a great contribution. Sounded like you had a great contribution, but you're not making the trip. Maybe change your location. Come back up. We'll go right back to you. We'll try it again with you. Fata, followed by Steve.
Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Gary, it's first time actually I'm coming on your stage, so is there a time frame that we can speak, or?
There's no set time frame, but if you start putting the moderator to sleep, we'll move on.
No, actually, I'll try not to.
Commodore
So, clearly when we're saying that what actually Trump is doing is lack of direction, we gotta spend more time on what Trump has done from the day that he became president for the second term, or as everyone says, 47th president of the United States. I will play a clip that it's for 2016, when actually President Trump even wasn't president at that time. And if I'm allowed to, obviously, with your permission, that he talks about how, especially when it comes to the foreign policy, we're saying everything we should await that. So can I do that, Gary?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Just talk until I tell you you can't. How about let's do it?
Cool, yeah. Because that actually helps you as well. I'm not sure if you ever seen that clip, but it's gonna be interesting. Just give me a minute.
You want to play a clip? Is it short?
It's not short, but I'll just play the portion that it's important.
And what is this a clip of? Let us know what we're listening to.
So as I said, it's for 2016, when President Trump was not actually even president at that time. So it helps about most of your questions today. Let's hear it.
I won't tell them where, and I won't, in my opinion, the single greatest military catastrophe in the history of our country. Worse than Pearl Harbor, because you take a look at what's happened, and citizens were attacked as opposed to the military being attacked. One of the true great catastrophes. And then there's ISIS. I have a simple message for them. Their days are numbered. I won't tell them where, and I won't tell them how. We must, as a nation, be more unpredictable. We are totally predictable. We tell everything. We're sending troops, we tell them. We're sending something else, we have a news conference. We have to be unpredictable. And we have to be unpredictable starting now. But they're going to be...
Okay, we got it, Fata. So what you're suggesting is that the president is deliberately being unpredictable, to use his terminology here, to throw our enemies off.
Absolutely. So that was a big portion of my point. So obviously, for the first time, for first 4 years that he was president, as we all know, I was way younger at that time. I wasn't in politics that much, but even um, as a student, I could tell there is a huge difference between when Obama's speech and Trump's speeches. Obama uses way more, I would say, politically phrases which Trump is not familiar with. So, but in the second term, which is the past year and a half and 2 years, we can clearly see that there's a lot of changes in the way that he's being a president of the United States. So I'm trying to make it as short as possible, but my point is um, we're not being honest with ourselves if we say President Trump doesn't have a strategy when it comes to Iran. What he was doing in the beginning of the war, in the beginning of his presidency last year, he started dealing with Iran in the first days, if you remember, and he brought it up the nuclear bomb issues, like in, I would say, first 45 days when he was in office, because he very well knew how this regime is, how they're gonna act, and how they are trying to buy time and jumping from this president to the next one, and hopefully they're gonna do the same thing what they did with the JCPOA, that I bought them a lot of times, like years and years of talking and negotiation, which resulting of getting billions of cash from the great country of United States. On the other hand, President Trump knew what he's gonna get into, so he started as soon as possible when he got into the office. He gave them 60 days. The Israel attacked them in the 61st day. For the second time, when it, as they call 40 days war, he was kind of hoping that he could get the same result in Venezuela. So what he got in Venezuela, I was saying that, and obviously in Clubhouse, as a Kurdish, we have our own rooms. I say that thousands of times in our rooms that this is not going to work out. In Iran, there is a ideologic Sikh terrorist regime. They're actually not just trying to save themselves and save the regime. They're actually trying to export their ideology out of the country. So this is not Venezuela that the President Trump can have a short a victory in a short period of time. It's going to be way longer, more costly, but even the results going to be better because 90 some plus millions people of Iran, they're going to be finally free after 47 years.
So let's take your theory and place it to a test using one of the examples that I stated during the opening salvo, and it has to do with the underground uranium, and his first saying that we're going to get all that nuclear dust, as he calls it, and then later saying, well, I don't care about that. That's so far underground. We'll keep an eye on them. We got satellites. We know every move that they're making. We don't really need to do so. How does that play into keeping the enemy off balance, to use your suggestion?
If I understand your question correctly, Gary, the nuclear bomb is the first issue that United States and the entire world, obviously not the entire world, but most of the world is dealing with Iran. So it's not just, to me, the nuclear bomb is always have been the first excuse to follow up with the rest of demands that United States and Israel has. So I'm not sure if I was able to answer to your question.
But he contradicted himself in a matter of days. He said, we will not leave until we get all the nuclear dust. and then later in an interview said, I'm not worried about any of that subterranean stuff that they have. We can keep an eye on it. Don't worry about it. I don't worry about that. So that's a direct contradiction. Now you are proposing that he directly contradicts himself in order to throw the enemy off kilter. How does that help in that regard?
So if you're actually asking about, I'm coming back to the clip that I played. So it's just comes back to, it's kind of really hard to predict President Trump's next move. When he says something and he says another thing next day, I personally am okay with that, which most of people suggesting to be. He did the same thing in the first few minutes when the war started on February 28th. He told the IRGC people to lay down their weapon. The Iranian people, is the day that you've been waiting for so long. And then as things moved on, and it was not actually the way that they thought it's going to be in Strait of Hormuz, they changed their plan, and now they're coming back to that plan. So I'm trying to answer your question in my perspective. So it's not just the nuclear dust, what he says, and if he says something else the next day, it's all about the plan that him and his administration are following it and doing it daily until get to the point that there is no terrorist or such a thing as terrorist regime as IRGC or Islamic Republic of Iran.
So to use your example rather than mine, he's not just speaking to the mullahs. He was speaking, in your example, to the people of Iran, and he gave them great hope. And people took to the streets when he told them to take to the streets. They took to the shelters when he told them to take to the shelters. And now I sense that there's a degree of frustration among many in the Iranian populace. I don't have daily contact. I have a little bit of contact. But I sense that there is a degree of frustration that the president gave them hope. They went to the streets and put themselves at risk when he gave them that hope, and now he pulled the carpet from under their feet. So, and as you say, it was because of a change in strategy because of the Strait of Hormuz, but nevertheless, the contradictions don't just affect the enemy, the contradictions affect the people that we purport to be liberating.
But Gary, if you probably is the language barrier between me and you, as you paid attention, if you paid attention, I said that he was seeking for similar victory like Venezuela and Iran. So he thought, I don't know how, the CIA and Mossad should be smarter than that, but what I was reading it was, he thought by killing first and second and third layer of the people who have a power in Iran, that would be kind of a victory for him and a freedom for Iran without getting more people killed in Iran. That's what I said, that with the strategy changed, and now, as you said and I said, that we can see his frustration and he's going back to the original plan. So I'm not sure if I was able to give you my point and how I was reading the situation.
No, I understood your point perfectly. That's why I asked you the follow-up questions. I'm not arguing on asking follow-up questions. So let me ask you a follow-up question to that suggestion. Why didn't they just continue to their policy of decapitation? It's worked. The Israelis have done it very well with regard to Hamas and other terrorist organizations. They just continue to decapitate. Nobody wants to be the next one to get promoted because there's a bullseye on you once you get promoted. So why did they stop then the tactic of decapitation? It doesn't happen overnight with, they killed the Ayatollah. Now his son is the Ayatollah. I mean, why did they just continue that strategy? Why would this president say, okay, we're going to switch to another strategy now?
Gary, in 1999, when United States was bombing Serbia, if I'm not mistaken, it was Milosevic, if I'm saying it right. United States bombed about 78 to 80 days, if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, they bombed museums, hospitals, where, if it was necessary, power plants, bridges. At 40 days, when they were decapitating, if I'm saying it the word correctly as you say it, they were pretty much out of targets militarily. As you probably see on the flags that I have on the picture, I'm Kurds, so from the Iranian Kurdistan. Just the Kurdish parts alone, they hit about 10,000 plus targets. Overall in Iran, they targeted more than 18,000 places, wherever and whatever was related to military. So at the 40 days, they were kind of out of options to attacking military places. Now, if these were starts, as you say, the decapitation, it's going to be way more sensitive targets and sensitive places. So my reading was the President Trump was giving the regime in Iran a chance to lay down their power, leave if they want, stay if they want, but they has to change their ideology, which is it's impossible because there is no lose when it comes to ideology. You can kill someone who believes in Hamas ideology, but you cannot change their beliefs. So to answer to your question, I would say they were pretty much right at the point. If they were going to continue attacking Iran, it had to be the bridges and power plants and stuff. So they just give them a...
So I'm going to ask you one final question and then move on. And I'm only doing so because you're an excellent contributor, and I appreciate your perspective. And recognizing that the Kurdish population is not monolithic, but that the viewpoint varies based on geography. But we all know that this country has asked the Kurds to step up and fight on our behalf in a number of conflicts, and they do so in the hopes that somewhere along the line they will be rewarded with the nation of Kurdistan, which I fully understand and appreciate that desire for your own homeland. But we've always failed you in the end. And do you see this being analogous with the Iranian people, with the Persians, that we build them up and then we let them down?
Gary, yes and no. Well, when we're talking about the Kurdistan, talking about an independence Kurdistan as different subjects, different matters, talking about the war right now, what's going on in Iran, and the Kurdish geography or the Kurdish party in Iran is different matter and different subjects. So when we're talking about the current war, we're talking about the Kurds, or at least some groups of people that I'm representing or I'm living with or I'm trying to be their ways are the people that we're talking about condemning or let me see if I can find a right word for it. Finishing this regime, okay? The independence is different subject. So when I say yes and no, you have not failed us, as not you personally, as United States. The Kurds in Rojava or in Syria, they have different ideology that they're clearly themselves, they're saying that they're not seeking for independence. On the other hand, the Druzes are seeking for independence and they're getting support. So it comes back to us as a Kurds in which part we're seeking what. So, but we can see it in Iraqi Kurdistan, even though that we're not independent as a Kurds in Iraq, but we have semi-autonomy, that we have pretty much all the rights that a country, pretty much not all of it, but pretty much we have all the rights that we need. And we always had United States support. The president of the Kurdistan party in Iraq, or as we call it, Bashar, or Southern Kurdistan, just signed an agreement a year ago with this administration worth of $70 billion, if I'm not mistaken, or almost $100 billion. And every time we asked their help, United States was there for us. So it's really yes and no. It's too deep. It depends how you look at it and how you're gonna read it, Gary. I hope I was helpful to your question.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be concerned about your ability to communicate. You communicated beautifully, and you were an excellent contributor. We invite you to come back and contribute more often. Thank you, Fateh. By the way, is it Fateh? Do I say your name right? Fateh? I always want to get people's names right. Okay, well, next time you'll correct me if I have it wrong. Steve, followed by Daryl.
Yeah, Gary, let me be sure, because I missed your opening monologue here. What flip-flopping are we discussing?
It's a shame you missed my opening monologue, because it went long reading the laundry list of things that he has flipped on. So you can pick any one that comes to your mind, or any dozen that come to your mind. The question is, does he do this because he's impetuous? The latest example that prompted this discussion, of course, is the 20% tariff that he announced yesterday that he pulled from the Strait of Hormuz today. That one lasted, that policy pronounced by the President of the United States to the world lasted 26 hours before he reneged on it. So there are those who would argue, well, he did that to get the Middle Eastern states to pony up to help fund the U.S. effort there, which is what he claims. Or they could say he just is talking out of the wrong end of his body, and he doesn't know what he's saying half the time. And we do hear both explanations from people.
Okay, well, let me just go at the last example that you give as a jumping off point. The conflict we're talking about is extremely complicated. Just listening to the last speaker there, and him talking about decapitation, and your follow-up to that, well, decapitation is a viable option. Why don't we just continue? I think that point in and of itself kind of drills down into the fluid nature of what we're discussing. I think if you go 2 or 3 deep and you don't know the permeations of the ideology that layers 2 or 3 deep, now when you start trying to have a meaningful discussion about, are we going to have a memorandum of understanding? We're going to have a ceasefire. Is the strait going to stay open? Is it not going to stay open? I think you're into such a fractured and divisive power structure there that it makes it very volatile. Now, if I'm sitting here and I'm trying to write a contract with someone, and we're discussing whatever business deal it may be, and the guy says, well, I'll do A. I start writing the contract. He says, no, I want B. I said, okay, we'll amend the contract. Well, maybe I want C. So your reaction to someone that you're engaged in, whether it's a ceasefire or whether it's a business deal, and how you react to it is partially attributed to the person on the other side of the table. And, there's the old saying in sports, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And, war by of its nature is volatile. So when we're talking about this proposed tariff or not tariff, there could be things like this. There could be things that the the Gulf states are starting to be reticent about what's going on. They're starting to feel some pain from this come and go in the Strait of Hormuz to move their oil out. Maybe they're getting cold feet. Maybe they're not. Maybe he throws this out here, and after he throws it out, he gets on the phone and says, "Hey guys, dude, we got to come to some kind of understanding here. We got to see this through. We're going to have problems." We don't know that conversation. We don't know the extent, whether it's cold feet or whether they're all in. We don't know. So to draw a conclusion about what you may be doing to try to ramp up the pressure, is that a good word for this? To make everybody fall in line, to exert the type of pressure that needs to be put on Iran to make them more genuine at the bargaining table. I mean, who knows? And that very well could contribute to this kind of behavior. On the other hand, and not to say there's not a yin and yang to this. Maybe he just got pissed one night and said, "Well, the hell with him. I'm gonna put a tariff on him." Maybe Rubio comes in and says, "Hey man, you can't do that. This ain't cool." Or Vance sets him down, and talks to him, and says, "You got a little off key there." That could be too. I mean, So I don't know, but I do know this, that particular situation, because of the type of people that we're dealing with, the ideology at play here, the economic disruptions that's being generated from this. And, Trump trying to bend this off on his political flank at home and prosecute war, because this is going to be used against him in the midterms. So he's thinking about that. He's trying to mitigate gas prices. He's trying to move on, manage, it's like herding cats, so to speak. It's a very difficult thing. Now, is that attributed to what went on here? It's a possibility. It could have been a hardball tactic to the Gulf states. Hey, dude, yeah, you're going to take a little punishment here, but in the aggregate and long term, then once we see this thing through, it's going to be better. You're not going to have some madman sitting off your coast at any time could obliterate you. So you guys need to check yourself and get in line, and let's see this through. That could be. The other part could be too. And so I don't know. But to say that all these things in a very complex and multidimensional situation, especially something that involves war, where you're trying to fend off your political allies on your backside while you're trying to prosecute against a very unstable and ideologically driven regime that's fractured 2 or 3 deep, that you don't know who's in charge or what their reaction is going to be. I think in and of itself, that leads to volatility. Volatility leads to rapid responses to volatility. So, that's my best take on that particular example. And I wouldn't read too much into that without knowing the granular details from behind the scenes here.
That's a good observation, Steve, but if we look at the president and we look at it in the aggregate, this is a tactic that he uses consistently. It's not just in the volatility of dealing with an enemy who you don't even know who you're negotiating with. Let me throw another one that I use as an example. I think I tossed out about a dozen examples. The steel and aluminum exemptions. After he rocked the global markets announcing a blanket 25% steel and 10% aluminum tariff on all foreign nations in 2018, he then retreated over the following weeks. He granted exemptions to Canada, Mexico, Europe, Australia, other key allies. So is this a tactic that he used to, a genius on his part to bring these countries to the negotiating table to develop fair tariffs on their side? Or was this an impetuous decision by the president? Because he has been labeled taco by his detractors for changing his mind on things, especially when it comes to tariffs, over and over and over again.
Well, I think in that particular example that you're talking about there, It's well documented the predatory nature of some foreign countries that subsidizing their steel and their aluminum to decimate our markets here. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, was those people that were subsidizing and selling steel and different metals in the United States, which is absolutely a national security risk, that if you can't produce these things and you get into a war and you got to make tanks, you got to make planes, you got to make rifles, and you don't have the capacity to do this is national security. Then you have to ask yourself this: who was the villain in this? China's been perpetually at it. Japan at one time was a major player in the steel industry, dumping steel. This is something I know you know as a reporter. Is well documented. Now, the question was this damage coming primarily from Asia? Was it coming from Europe? Was it coming from Canada? Was it coming from Mexico? The examples that you laid out that he retracted from. Maybe it could be, let me throw this out as a possibility, that one of his advisors said, hey, Mr. President, we may be getting too broad here because that may account for 5%, but 90% of it is coming from Asia. So pull that back. Let's focus the thing on where the real damage is coming from, and let's take it from there. I would think that would be a very reasonable thing, and might you explain that? Do you disagree?
No, but then the question becomes, why didn't he talk to the advisors before imposing a blanket tariff, to use this example?
Well, there you go. That's just, there is some impetuous nature to the decision. But, you can be impetuous and you can be stubborn. You can hold on to your impetuous reaction, or you can be impetuous and then someone can bring more facts to the table that maybe in the heat of the moment you weren't clearly thinking through, and have them address it to you and say, yeah, I might have been wrong here. Maybe I need to pull back. The guy that you need to worry about is the guy that will be impetuous and will be stringently, dogmatically holding on to that decision no matter what facts come in. Again, on the steel and aluminum stuff, the damage to the U.S. economy and the steel mills and the aluminum mills was not being done primarily from Europe. It was not being done primarily from Canada or Mexico. Probably Mexico had a little bit in it, but it was primarily the Asian markets that was trying to get market share and was dumping this stuff below the manufacturing costs. And why we ever allowed this to go on is a crime against the American people. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Steve. We'll go to Daryl, followed by Moran.
Hey, Gary, can you hear me?
Nope.
Okay, so a couple of things. So the vast majority.
Why do you ask me? Why do you ask me? If I say yes, you talk. If I say no, you talk. Why do you even ask me?
Well, because remember before I was having this problem, and you would be like, Daryl, I can't hear you. Daryl, I can't hear you. I guess whatever the gods, the clubhouse gods fixed it, so it's not really anymore.
Just presume I can hear you.
Gotcha.
If I don't hear you, I'll let.
Gotcha. So the vast majority of the oil that's transiting the Strait has already been paid for, right? So when he said this yesterday, there were a lot of people scratching their heads because they were wondering, well, how exactly can you execute on this tariff, one? And two, if I were like, let's say, a country that has already purchased this oil, and you're now going to tariff me for oil I've already purchased, could this be considered an act of economic aggression? And I think, this is just me personally, I think he said this just in his manic modes. And, to Steve's point, someone probably came and said, hey, you can't do that, To Steve's other point, this idea of, well, we're going to get the Gulf states or we're going to get these oil states to pay up, right? But they're already paying up, the whole, and I've talked about this a million times, and I know people are hearing me, is that
when we negotiated the petrodollar, the agreement that Henry Kissinger made with the oil producing countries is that we will provide them with military protection if they settle their trades in US dollars. So someone is telling him, hey, we've already negotiated this thing. You know, historically, you can see after we started putting bases around the Gulf states, particularly in oil producing countries, that was the agreement that Nixon and Kissinger negotiated. I just don't think he actually understands what is actually happening. I don't think he has enough knowledge of what has happened. And this is why someone has to then come and tell him after he's tweeted or truthed, I don't know what you're supposed to call it anymore, that he's already saying something, and the smarter brains in the room have to come in, pull him in, and say, hey, you can't do that. You know, again, if I were a nation that is buying that oil, that is transiting the strait, and I've already paid for it, and you're then going to come and tell me that there's a tariff on it, this is almost like an episode of The Sopranos, you know, where they go around to the local businesses and, hey, you have to pay us for protection. And so we're going to make sure that nothing happens to you, but you're going to give us 10% or 20% of your business. I just don't think he actually understands what's happening or how things work. And I think every time he does this, the reason that I don't even want to call it flip-flopping, because I just don't think he understands what he's doing half the time. Someone has to come in and then tell him, hey, you can't do that, which is why he has to reverse course.
Thank you, Daryl. We'll go to Moran, followed by Amir.
Hi, Gary. Hello, everyone. Actually, Gary, I agree with you. I think it's a combination of both. I mean, the president spent most of his life in real estate business and real estate environment. I guess in that kind of environment, it has been advantageous to him to be ambiguous, you know, whether what he wants, how much he's going to pay, whether he's going to do the deal, he's not going to do the deal. So he has learned to be ambiguous, and that's what he grew up with in real estate business. And also, you mentioned Taco a few times. I absolutely disagree about Taco, because I think the president, that's part of his what I call tactical ambiguity. If you go back, look at him, 50% of what he says he does, 50% he doesn't. I think, you know, he's keeping it like 50-50, so he can be ambiguous, so his real estate partners cannot, you know, guess what he wants to do. That may come across as Taco to some, but this president has already attacked Iran 3 times in his second term. That's hardly a Taco. I mean, this guy is not chickening out. When he wants to do something, he does it. But he doesn't do everything he says. He only does 50% of what he says. So we have to keep that in mind. But, you know, Gary, this stuff might be good in real estate business, but this is horrible when it comes to foreign policy, because nobody trusts what this guy says, because you can't be sure. Is this part of the 50% he's going to do, or is it part of 50% he's just bluffing, he's not going to do? That's the issue, the difficulty with Trump, because you don't know what he's doing, and that's why whether they are your adversary or your allies, they can't trust what you're saying, and that's really bad in foreign policy. And unfortunately, he has surrounded himself with people. You know, he handpicked in his second term all the people who would not mention that, and because, you know, the experience showed from the first term, if you tell him that, you're out. You're going to get kicked out of the administration. And these guys would give an arm and a leg to stay in power, to stay in the White House, have access to the president, the strongest, you know, man in the world. So unfortunately, most of these guys are not going to mention it to him. And he's an 80-year-old guy. He's not going to change tactics. He's going to remain the same. We just have to wait till his term is over. Otherwise, this is intentional, it's deliberate, it's something he picked up in real estate, and he's going to continue to do it. And it's not out of cowardice or he chickens out. He just He does 50% of what he says, not everything. Thank you, Gary.
So, Moran, you added to the conversation an aspect that I had not mentioned and nobody heretofore has, and that has to do with when it's frustrating when I or you don't know whether to question or accept the veracity of something the President of the United States makes. But I think you've underscored another issue, and that has to do with other nations and how they view us. Again, as Fateh had suggested earlier, this may be deliberate, that he wants to keep everybody, friends, allies, enemies, a little off kilter, not knowing which way we're going. But I guess you're suggesting that in the aggregate, that's really not a good tactic, even if it is intentional.
Absolutely, Gary. This is bad because your allies don't know whether they can trust you. I mean, when it comes to your security and international affairs, this is not real estate. This is a matter of life and death. It's not a matter of whether you lose a deal or not, whether you make some money or not. These people have to go find alternatives. As we can see, the Europeans are trying to strengthen NATO without US. Germany is rearming. Japan is doing the same. Japanese and Koreans have hinted that if they need be, they can go nuclear. I mean, there's a lot of stuff being said which is not good for international affairs, and it's all the result of not being able to trust what this guy says, because he only means 50% of what he says, and it's a guessing game which 50% he means and which 50% he doesn't.
Or you can mean it today, and then 26 hours later, change his mind, as we saw last night.
Yeah, that's his tactic. You can't tell. He can always say that was the 50% I didn't mean. So he can change his mind. This way he covers himself. Anyway, that's what he is.
By the way, at the end of the our gathering here, I'm going to have some breaking news on the reflecting pool. That was, if you want a sneak preview of it, click on the main chat above and see what William posted and what I researched and found based on his posting. You're going to think that this came from The Onion. When you hear the real damage to the reflecting pool. Anyway, that's not today's topic, but I want to end on that note in a few minutes because I'm stunned. I'm glad I'm stunned because at least I'm not completely beyond being surprised by things any longer, which could happen the way the news cycle has been going lately. Today, somebody at work came in the morning, and at that point, the 20% tariff was on. And I happen to know that this person, although it's not reflected in his reporting, you would never know this person's political ideology, but I happen to know, big supporter of the president. And he said to me, Gary, didn't Rubio say that there can be no tariffs on the Strait of Hormuz? I said, yep. And then as I pointed out today in our opening salvo, the president said it.
And that's international law, Gary. I mean, that's international waters. You can't tariff international waters.
Well, this is exactly the entire argument over the control of the strait. Is it international or is it Iranian waters? The Iranians claim it to be theirs. If the Iranians are correct in that claim, then it's not international waters, and the Iranians have the right to impose tariffs. So if it's not international waters, then as the guardians of the tariffs, so went the argument by the president, the United States has a right. Whoever's controlling the strait today, who may not be the same people controlling the strait tomorrow, I have the right to impose tariffs. And then somebody said, well, I'm sure somebody said to the president, wait a minute, Mr. President, are you now arguing that the Strait are not international waters and should be open and free? You're playing into Iran's hands. And he slapped himself on the head and said, oh my gosh, that's Scary's projection. But I don't think that that's far from what happened here. Because why else would he make the pronouncement and 26 hours pull back on it? And when he pulled back on it, he did so in a manner in which he explained to us this was all a tactic on his part to get the Gulf states to ante up. In 26 hours, they all quickly scurried. They all got on the line to Washington and said, wait. Well, don't put a tariff on. We'll pay you money to keep you from putting a tariff on. Is that even possible? Maybe. It's up to you to question the veracity of what the president is saying. Amir, followed by Perusian.
Hey Gary, hi everyone. I mean, could we think about the tariff? I don't want to be sounding like defending Trump here, but could we not be thinking of tariff as protection? I mean, if the U.S. Navy is providing protection for the ships, then do they not sort of have a point in this? Call it tariff, call it protection money, whatever. Anyway, that's a side point. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Trump is obviously flip-flopping in terms of what he says. But does that really flip-flopping in terms of what he does? I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. I'm not sure the evidence supports that. It could well be that flip-flopping in terms of what he says is nothing more than, shot across the bow to deter enemy in terms of, for example, the examples that you mentioned, Gary, in terms of tariffs or other sort of negotiation tactics which you referred to. It could well be kind of in that context, but to me it seems that in terms of his action, at least since February 28, he has acted, or shall we say reacted, kind of in accordance with the events on the ground. I mean, okay, we can all sort of argue either way on this, but if you construct a narrative that one could construct in favor of, shall we say, to say positive in terms of what he's been doing, you could mention that he hasn't really flip-flopped. I mean, from the outset, Trump, what did he say? From the outset, he had two very distinct objectives. He had said already that he wants to change the regime from within. In other words, he wanted somebody to come up from within the ranks of the existing regime. I mean, he called it regime change because he got rid of the top layer, shall we say. So the leader and kind of his close cronies were eliminated. And of course, a large portion of the military and military-related industries were hit very hard in the following sort of 40-day war. Then he offered the pause. So, I mean, he wanted to see if the regime is prepared to surrender, and that was the thing that he's always sort of not flip-flopped on. He's talked about regime change in terms of surrendering. Now, that was followed by the negotiations in Pakistan. Then that led to the 14-point MOU. Now, the second point that I think is still, he can be regarded as consistent, is the objective that the MOU had. It kind of has several faults, and I don't want to bore everybody here, but first and foremost, it was to calm the markets. Especially the oil market. It reached 120 during the 40-day war, and as a result of the MOU, it fell down to what below $70, I think. So the second aspect, it was to kind of observe, shall we say, or monitor the internal power struggle in Iran, which by the way is still ongoing, and it is getting worse. So that's another aspect which is, you can give him credit for. The third was to kind of readjust the relationship, which he kind of fucked up with NATO, with the allies in NATO. And we've recently seen in the NATO meeting in Istanbul, in Turkey, that he's actually turned a new leaf and is really working hard on it. So much so that we had the UK listing IRGC as a terrorist group. Now that, as you know, has a lot of repercussions. I mean, for London, I mean, you may know that it's been a kind of a leaky Western capital for IRGC, which is no longer is going to be the case. So he hasn't, he has flipped on this account. So he's putting something wrong that he was doing initially, he's putting it right. I mean, there are other aspects too, but I'm going to leave it there. So, I mean, just to summarize, I think, well, I mean, I could be wrong, I'm just guessing, like everybody else to some extent. I mean, Trump has a strategy, but he's facing a formidable adversary. And it's not easy to deal with Iran, with the way that they operate, and they're kind of distributed matrix management in politics and in military. So unless you go kind of, all-out war and target the essential infrastructures that Fateh, for example, mentioned, you don't really have much choice other than do what Trump has been doing.
Right, but we're not just talking about Iran in a vacuum. We're talking about, 1.5 terms in office in which he has consistently changed his position on things quite rapidly. So, as I said to Steve, there may be some unique reasons with regard to our dealings with Iran, but in general, this is his way of doing business as President of the United States. And so I redirect to the question at hand, is this a lack of direction on the part of the President, or is this always a deliberate tactic?
So in terms of actual actions that is sort of fed into some deeds taking place and having a real consequence, what example would you give?
Well, I raised that issue in my opening salvo. I said that, I gave the argument and the counter argument, and one of the points that I made was that some people, might say they might not like the president's demeanor. They might think that it's atypical, but also if you look at it in the aggregate, and I've heard people argue this right on this stage, in general, if you look at it in the aggregate, he's very successful in getting what he needs to get done or wants to get done, and that he's accelerated this kind of a tactic in the second term because he was unable to get everything he wanted in the first term. I don't know, does that answer your question?
I mean, I'm not a fan of Trump personality, in quote, but I want to understand what in material effect has he flip-flopped on, which has resulted
I've read a dozen different things that he flip-flopped on. I mean, I'm not going to go through them all again now, but he's flip-flopped consistently on issues over and over and over again. The tariffs is a prime example. So he says one day we're going to bomb them into submission, and then he's not bombing them into submission. He says on one day that we're not going to pull back until we get the nuclear dust. Then he says, I don't care about what's happening subterranean. We're watching it with our satellites. We know what they're doing. So he contradicts himself constantly. We all know this. The only question is this a tactic or is this a ship that's rudderless?
what I've just outlined, my example for you, that what he talks, you can ignore. What he acts, what he does, isn't that inconsistent? Isn't that much of a flip-flop? If you look at it from 28 February.
So when the president makes an announcement, as he did yesterday, we are imposing a 20% tariff on Iran. We should ignore that the president of the United States made such a pronouncement and wait to see whether he's really going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I would just.
Well, what about when he said? What about when he said in the same breath, we're going to reimpose at 4 o'clock tomorrow, meaning this afternoon, the blockade? Are we supposed to suss out which part of that, the veracity we accept, and which part of it, the veracity we do not? Or do we say, well, that's what he said, but it doesn't mean anything until he actually does it? Don't the words of a president of the United States have consequences or not?
Not this one. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not a Trump fan, but I think we should ignore what he says most of the time and concentrate on what he does most of the time. I think that's what I would say. I would leave it there.
Well, that's really odd to suggest that to a journalist. Ignore what the president says. Well, I mean, I think that puts you in the same camp in some regard, maybe from a different perspective as those who have been beating me up on Facebook for quoting the president. How dare you quote the president without saying that he's a liar, is what they're telling me. You're not a real journalist. If you were a real journalist, every time you quoted the president, you'd say he's a liar. Now maybe we take it a step further. Don't quote the president. Don't listen to what the president has to say. I think for me, a person who's been a journalist for nearly 60 years, that's the line I can't cross. I can't cross that line. I just can't do it. That's like saying stop breathing. Gary, don't listen to what the President of the United States says. Maybe other people are capable of doing that, but I'm saying that my personality, my perspective, my experience, bring the oxygen tank in. I can't breathe if somebody says to me, don't listen to what the President of the freaking United States says. It's just unfathomable for me to conceive that as a possibility. Now, maybe that's a failing on my part. I don't know. But I'm telling you, folks, that's where I am. Perusian followed by William.
Hello, Gary. Good night, everybody. Dear Gary, you know, the Iranian are people who sometimes think about America meddling in this coup d'etat in the 50s, you know. And I think the president is trying to somehow, you know, he's facing actually a regime like a tree that has, that its root has been destroyed by some kind of an insect, and it is already falling tree. So he's sitting beside organizing a World Cup in his nation, and he doesn't want to go to an all-out war during a World Cup. Watching how the Iranian economy is going down and down and down and down and more, destroying slowly by slowly important infrastructure of Iran. At the same time, the Iranian people are watching how their country, their beloved country, my beloved once country of my parents, is going, you know, it is humiliating. It's a reason to be ashamed of how our leaders in Iran, they are not my leaders, but the leaders of the Iran, the country, are destroying slowly by their madness and by their Putin led strategy. You know, he's sitting aside, and one day he said like this to can to be able to say someday, look, I've tried all I could do. I give them a chance, and then another time I give them another chance, and they haven't used it, and then I even ask Israelis to not go all out to the war, and then I stopped them again, but then I supported them again because Israel is important for us. And one day, it is actually, if you watch to this into this picture from far away, you see it is actually a competition between Russia and America. The Russians, who are actually right now the actual rulers of Iran, because all those corrupt revolutionary guard people, they don't have any place to live once their system will fall. They can only go to Moscow. They can only go to where Bashar Assad is living now. Their property, their girlfriends, their families, their second houses and third houses, and everything they have, it is in Russia. And the Russians have an interest to close the routes of oil to achieve a higher oil prices, to be able to finance their aggression against Europe and Ukraine. So Trump is sitting aside, watching it, giving them time. He has already spoke out an ultimatum, and I am sure that this tree without any roots, and the roots would be, unity between the people and government, kind of a patriotism. There is nothing left like this. The people of Iran are watching economy and suffering under the affection of all this war and sanctions throughout decades. And he is now waiting for the right moment to give this tree the last push to fall. And he can choose the moment when it would be the best moment to do that. He is, like Mehran said, the businessman who knows that he can achieve goals or uh, achieve more wealth with each step is doing. And it is not because he is strong or he is a very smart guy. It is simply because the Iranian regime has no support among its own people. He knows that at the end, these people will be gone. And he is now just choosing the time of the fallen tree, organizing his own interest, as I said, the World Cup, and in the right moment, he will decide to give it the last push. The sad thing is, we Iranians, with all these actions that this regime is doing, we have to pay the price decades to our neighbors for destroying their infrastructure or making them trouble. They will send us the bill for building up their once from Iranian Revolutionary Guard destroyed infrastructure, and America would have the most gain, and he is letting Putin also have his kind of success moments just for time being, to decide at the end when he is also finishing his interest in Iran. it is very sad actually, and I hope this madness and this nightmare will come to an end for Iranian people and for the sake of the future of the Iranian people.
So, Persian, I don't know whether the president is waiting for the end of the World Cup to put on a final push or not, or whether that's wishful thinking on your part. But I do want to mention this. This is what I love about this forum that we're doing. We have people calling in from all around the world, from many different perspectives. And Perusian, you brought to the table something that has not been discussed. I don't think we ever discussed this. If we did, I apologize because I don't recall it having been discussed. But how Russia benefits heavily from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. This is, I think, something that has to come, this kind of perspective, from somebody on the outside looking in who can look at it from a little bit of a different perspective, such as you did. Russia is kind of like, if you really look at it, a financial and geopolitical winner of the conflict right now. Now, where do I come up with this all of a sudden? Gary, you're a genius. No, I'm not. I'm reading this from the analysis of the Washington Institute. What the Washington Institute is telling me, it's a think tank, guess where it's located, because Russian supply routes are entirely independent of the Persian Gulf, the blockade eliminates its primary state-backed energy competitors while driving up Moscow's revenues, which of course, given the conflict that they're involved in, this is vital. And we know that there is an alliance between Iran and Russia because Iran is providing Russia drones to attack Ukraine. So, this is really very interesting perspective that you brought and something that we should consider. Did the Iranians potentially close the strait for the sole purpose of supporting the Russians?
They are already Russians. It is not Iranian. There is no Iranians anymore. The Iranian government has been found to death. Those who are ruling Iran now is the KGB.
The Kremlin? The Kremlin?
It was actually from the beginning of the revolution only Russia and Soviet Union that has been ruled Iran. It was a system of destroying a very important partner for the Western Alliance in the region, and it was only the plan of KGB. They attacked Afghanistan and they took Iran, and they have enabled America to control the energy in this region. The Americans are invested and they have a lot of influence in the Gulf, but the north part has been fallen after the revolution in the hands of Russians.
So I'm reading from the Guardian. You know, you know how I do this. Don't take it to the bank, but this is based on very quick research that I'm doing when people bring things up that I have not heard argued before. According to an article in the Guardian, Iran operates as an independent state, making its own tactical blunders, such as the recent collapse of the June ceasefire, but Moscow has provided the critical infrastructure, real-time intelligence, and technological brain, keeping the Iranian war machine functioning. And I think that also includes, I have read, satellite information that helps them attack U.S. bases in the Gulf.
Excuse me to interrupt, but you can be sure Russia is planning to make America a lot of trouble. They are using us as a defenseless country without caring rulers for the people. They are sacrificing us. They are using us as the mad dog, like they are using North Korea to damage the Western interest.
Well, I want to tell you something that happened yesterday
that I'm reading also in The Guardian that I was unaware of, and I would not be aware of it if you had brought this up, so I thank you, Perusian. Yesterday, after the massive retaliatory airstrikes on 140 Iranian coastal targets, Russia moved what The Guardian is referring to as a highly specialized, I'm not familiar with the aircraft, folks. I'm going to give you the name of it. The Tu-240PU Airborne Command and Control Aircraft, which belongs to Russia's elite Rossiya Special Flight Squadron. It landed in Tehran yesterday. According to this article, the Tu-214PU is an airborne operational hub used by Russia's top political military leadership during conflicts. The Guardian says that defense analysts suggest Moscow deployed this asset to provide Iran with a secure, uninterceptable communications platform, helping Tehran secure its command architecture while the United States bombs dismantle its physical land-based communication networks.
And their goal is you to nuke us. They want America to attack Iranian soil with nuclear atomic bombs. They want you to show bad and worse and cruel. They are fighting, they are sacrificing us. They want to continue this war to the point.
I'm going to have to move on, but Perusian, if what you are just saying, if that analysis is accurate, I don't know whether it is or it isn't, I'm not arguing that it is not, but if it is accurate, and we are talking today about how impetuous the President of the United States is, please God Almighty, Mr. President, do not allow yourself to be suckered into using nuclear weapons. Please, God. William, followed by Andrew.
Hey, Gary. Hey, everybody. You started out the conversation talking about various terms, like toll, transit fee, tax, port charge. Those weren't all your words, but things that were described for exacting, paying tribute to have safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And all of these types of charges, whether you're going to doll it up and call it a channel maintenance fee or a port beautification fee or a toll or a tax or a port charge, all of these things imply a degree of sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Just like Pennsylvania has sovereignty over the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Well, he uses the term guardianship. Is there a difference between
yes,
sovereignty
there
and
is a
guardianship?
difference.
Well,
Guardianship implies that when you flip into the other tariffs, and let me just finish one thing. There's an argument made that both Oman and Iran could have an economic exclusive zone based on some readings of international law and legally exert some level of sovereignty to then charge tolls. On the other hand, when you have the United States standing off the coast saying we're going to exert a tariff, which implies a tariff is a tax paid by an importer of goods, usually into a sovereign country on various things. That by implication saying we're going to charge you fees implies that the United States, we're going to charge you tariffs, implies that the United States has some sort of legitimate claim of sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, which in fact it does not.
I don't know if it implies that. You maybe.
All right. Well, let me go on.
Well, hold on a second. You know, you don't like when I counter what you say, and you want to move on to the next point. All right, please go on. And I'd like you to consider what I'm saying here. I don't think the president implied at all sovereignty. What he was saying was, and he backtracked on it, but what he was saying was, look, we'll keep the Strait of Hormuz open, but we're paying for this. We're doing the heavy lifting. We need to be compensated in some way for this. That's what he was saying. I don't think he was saying, like he says, Greenland belongs to the United States, or Canada belongs to the United States, or Venezuela belongs to the United States. I believe he's pretty unambiguous when he makes such broad claims of planting the flag, so to speak. He didn't do that in this case.
Okay, so then it's more like akin to a mafiosa saying that you've got to pay me for me keeping the Strait of Hormuz open with my guns.
It's like the mob going to the Korean business.
It's like
you're right about that. It's like the mob going to the Korean business people in Detroit. I did a story on this, and saying if you want to stay in business, you have to pay us protection fees. We'll keep you protected, but if you don't stay in business, we don't know what might happen to your business. That actually happened.
What mafiosa right does the United States have to say, we're going to control this, and rather than pay the toll to Iran or Oman, you're going to pay the toll to us?
Okay, so the answer to that question, which is really not germane to the discussion, but the answer to that question is the United States doesn't need anybody's permission to do anything from the perspective of this administration. That's why the Secretary of State said we're going to eliminate the International Criminal Court. International law does not apply to the United States. And how are you going to enforce international law anyway? But that's not the question. We're not arguing, we're not discussing here whether the 20% tariff should have been imposed, whether it should not have been imposed, whether it was right to impose it and then 26 hours remove it as a policy. The question here is the president's being on issues consistently. Is that a strategy or a sign of an impetuous, rudderless government?
I don't think it's an either or question, because what it is, Trump has really got into a war, lost face, was totally embarrassed because he couldn't carry through on his varied, poorly articulated objectives, but really came away with a loss because what he was left with was the embarrassment of having the Strait of Hormuz closed rather than open, so that none of the real objectives were really achieved, and all the United States is then left with is a violation of international American policy that goes back to the founding of the United States Navy, where the United States Navy has stood for freedom of navigation. I've heard Malcolm Nance talk about this, that he was conducting freedom of navigation exercises with United States naval ships through the Persian Gulf in order to establish that indeed this is an international waterway and must remain open. And it was open, and it was respected by the Iranians and the Omanis as an open international waterway until Trump waged this war. And they said, hey, you know what? I think we have another resource revenue stream here. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's really that Trump is trying to cover up and save face and save embarrassment from a humiliating loss that exposed weakness, not strength, of the American military to do what it wants, as it will, with or without permission of anybody else, without international law, just to do what it wants when it wants. And so I think Trump is deeply, grievously embarrassed by this, just as Vladimir Putin is embarrassed by his inability to take over Ukraine in 3 days as he promised, and it's going to get him, maybe it's going to get him killed, maybe it's going to get him thrown out of an 8-story window. A man who Trump deeply admires, So I think the wannabe dictators, the wannabe oligarchs, the actual oligarchs, have lost face with the developments of the recent events in the world, and Putin could end up dead. We don't know, and Trump will lose his idol that way. But and I think it is an important point to say that Russia and Iran, at least at the elite level, at the oligarch level, have had close contacts, and that a place of refuge for the mullahs could be Moscow, except Moscow is now under fire by the Ukrainians, and Russia itself could end up staying together or breaking apart. It looks like the Chinese are making arrangements with the Russian elite to have ties for some sort of elite stability in the event that that Putin falls. So I think there's a potential breakup of, we watched the USSR fall. It looked like it was going to be all powerful until it fell apart. And we could be looking at the breakup of the Russian Federation, which I think would be a thing for the world.
Of course, there are those who would argue that the American empire is the one falling apart. So let's hope it's yours to
Two
get
things can be true simultaneously. I think the American empire has been damaged by the fact that we are proceeding without allies, which was one of our greatest assets. So, yeah, I think two things can be true at the same time. And it's not just a question of flipping back and forth or different tactics. I think it's just a deep embarrassment that Trump is trying to save face. And I hope the Iranian mullahs, the oppressors of the people, flee to Moscow and take refuge and take their money there, and let them get out of Iran so that the Iranian people can be free. That would be wonderful.
Thank you, William. We'll go to Andrew, followed by Fatah.
Hi, Gary. Can you hear me okay?
No. Yeah, I hear you fine.
So say no. Yeah, I think it's a combination of both to some degree, and I'll put it like this. I'll be very succinct. I think his strategy in regards to, or I think he's very impetuous. I think he flips at the mouth, but it gets him into trouble. Because people will either take him seriously or not take him seriously, depending on what the situation is. But in terms of NATO and the NATO allies, I think they took him seriously in terms of, you're not paying enough, et cetera, et cetera. And then in terms of the trade and things of that nature against his allies, they've seen that he's been serious about it. But I think it's a failed strategy. Even if it was impetuous at first and then became a strategy, or vice versa, it doesn't matter. It's failed because what he's done to Canada is push us further away than we want to be, and that we've traditionally been, and there's no going back now. What he's done to Europe is the same, and we're coalescing now with Europe as our partners rather than the United States. We're buying our military equipment from Europe, not the United States. So we're talking billions of dollars that would have been going to the United States normally if you go back a couple of years. But that's not going to happen. We're looking elsewhere. So I think that's a failed strategy. So whether he's impetuous or it's something that he's conceived thoughtfully, I think it's failed. So I think that's really what you have to look at. In terms of Iran, this back and forth, I think that's a failure. Whether it's he's trying to, I don't know, keep them guessing. I don't know that they really give a shit one way or another. They're going to continue to look after their interests, there being the Iranian government, not the people. So I think that's a failure. And I would like you to consider, in relation to this, it's not really on topic, but Mr. Rubio is trying to dismantle and discredit the International Criminal Court, which you're not a signatory to, but other countries are. And the fear is that many in the administration will not be able to travel to other countries in Europe and Canada, etc., if they do something in Iran that constitutes violations of international law. in the criminal courts. So, and it could be related. I don't.
Thank you, Andrew. Fatah, followed by Daryl.
Thank you for giving me another chance for the talk, Gary. What I'm reading, or what actually I'm getting the vibe from this room is mostly criticizing Trump for every move he does. And it just kind of, unfortunately, it becoming a norm in the United States that, oh, even if someone likes Trump, they're shy to be firm that, well, I'm actually supporting this guy, which I personally am. I love President Trump. I love everything that he does. Specifically, what he has done to Iranian people, that we're from there, we were born and raised in there, no one in the entire world has done for these people. So please, please, just don't be like this. Don't be like those women who were taking Tylenol on TikTok as soon as President Trump announced that, well, Tylenol is the first cause of autism. There were stupid people that they were taking Tylenol on TikTok just to prove him is wrong. So please don't be like this. That's that.
Except it wasn't true.
Well, that's different subject. And Gary, you're saying that we can't talk about that side that you're arguing. Rubio and Trump say there's gonna be no tolls on the Strait of Hormuz, but anyone who were gonna say, okay, if the United States not gonna take these tolls, there is gonna be Iran. You're like, no, this is a different subject. We're not talking about this. How can you say that? Which is, if the United States not gonna protect that area, which is there is literally less than 5 or 10% of the United States oil coming from that strait. If the United States not going to be there, sacrificing Americans' money and lives, there is going to be a country who's running by a terrorist regime, taking those tolls and getting that money to the Hamas and Hezbollah and Kataib al-Haq and all these terrorist groups.
So what did I say that we're not allowed to talk about?
No, anyone who were talking about if there were a couple people. One of them was the William, if I'm not mistaken his name. He said, okay, if United States not gonna take these tolls, Iran's gonna. And you say, well, this is different subject. We're talking about.
I think you misunderstood. He was talking about something that was not really related to the topic at hand, which was Trump's flipping on the issues, and I wanted to redirect him. That's all.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you meant that we. So my point is, if the United States is not gonna be there and do that, there's gonna be a regime proudly taking, which is, guys, there is no way on earth this regime is gonna stay standing next couple years, and there is no way on earth this United States and Israel gonna let these stupid or I can't find another word for them at this moment, brutal regime to stand. So if United States not gonna take these tolls, this regime is gonna take them, and hopefully, the next war, which is gonna happen very soon, sooner than you're thinking, is gonna be just end of this regime, and hopefully. As I said in previous mic, millions of people gonna be finally free in that country, and may God bless United States and President.
Thank you, Fatah. Alan, what happened to you? How did you get stuck in the audience? I just happened to see you there.
It's the favor of Clubhouse. I've been sitting there quietly. What I sent you when the other gentleman was talking, that's what I sent you, that the article. It just shocked me the other day. That airplane with that sophistication, it landed the same day. You know, they announced President Lindsey, Mr. Lindsey died, and it's not a coincidence, Baba. It is not. I cannot believe it's a coincidence. There is something is cooking, and I'm sure, as you said, you were 100% right. Russia, since World War II, tried to get hand of free water, and the only places free water is, it's a Persian Gulf to get down there. And they did. As soon as this regime took over, last 47 years, they have the total right of Caspian Sea, which in Shah's time, they had the rights at 25%, and we had 75% of right, which the most expensive caviar comes out of that area. Now the Russia is taking them and selling them all over the world, and then they've been handing, and they will all the way go through the Strait of Hormuz left and right without any hesitation. So one of the support they have, Iran is giving away the wealth of Iranian just to have them support them and China from the other side. Right?
Thank you, Alan. Sorry I didn't see you sitting there in the audience. I apologize for that. Daryl?
No need for brother.
Okay, my man. Daryl, you're up, and then I wanted to leave a little bit of time before 7 o'clock for the Reflecting Pool update that just floored me when I just read it a few minutes ago, thanks to William sending it to me. Daryl.
So quickly, to Andrew's point about us leaving the criminal court, it could be Iran, but it also could be, planning for an offensive in Cuba. It could be planning, unfortunately planning for an offensive in Greenland. When someone wants to leave a body where they know what the laws are, that means, hey, we may have to break these and we don't want to be held accountable for it. I do think it's interesting that we want to leave the criminal court.
I find that very interesting as well. Thank you, Daryl. So, William sent this as off topic, but it's blowing me away. I can't sit on it any longer. It sent me something that somebody posted online, and I looked at it. I said, "Well, who the hell is this guy? What does he know?" So not William, the guy whose tweet he forwarded. So I looked deeper into it, and this has been verified by the Scripps News Service. So the president says that the reflecting pool was vandalized. So this poor guy on the bicycle, the Olympian, he's facing charges because he pulled the liner from the bottom. He vandalized and he says there are these long cuts in there made by box cutters or knives. The president said that. Well, when they drained the pool and you could see the photography, there are tire tracks there. And I'm thinking, how the hell did tire tracks get on the liner of the reflecting pool? Well, apparently they did a motorcade through the pool. This is not The Onion. This is the Scripps News Service. Apparently they did a motorcade through the pool. I don't know what that was about. Part of the Armed Forces presentation. I have no idea. But according to Scripps, the tire width matches the width of the tires from the motorcade. So, did the president vandalize the reflecting pool? Folks, we're here Monday through Friday from 5 o'clock New York time. So until 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow, for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum, everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
on Florida. You know that. Yeah, but you're talking about woman that actually collects use condoms and like gets to do a wall. But not of celebrities. No, just the fucking random dirty assholes that she invites over. She had a fucking house full of. I just want to know how dirty condoms that she had. I just want to know how that room smells. Like, should I just put them in a Ziploc bag like to prevent the smell, or like they're just hanging leaks? We're just hanging pinned to the wall. They were tied up by the knot pinned to the wall with the guy's name and the date that the condom was eaten. Do you know that that house probably smells like a dead cat? Yeah, probably. I saw this. It was a documentary on either Vice News or ELC. I don't remember. She was in Arizona. That sucks because she's fucked every other guy in the state. What's wrong with you? I'm really glad that I fucked her. I won't actually think Wi-Fi that is later. Can we go through that wall? You like slow down the fucking as it's just recording it. Where's the baby? It's a baby. What's happening? Did you have it for the fourth time already? What up, my guy? You already had the fourth time? I got to. And the fifth time and the sixth time. Oh, the second and sixth time. No, you're supposed to fucking Zimbabwe. So it sounds different. There are these women that will drug and rape white men, not because they want their sperm to get pregnant, but because they believe in some voodoo shit. Yeah, I'm dead serious. You can look this up. It's there's documented cases. It's the only cases I've ever found, where women would like basically gang rape a guy. Gang rape a guy. Dead serious. So in other words, they would sedate him, then they would tie him to a bed, and then they would and then the women would take turns fucking him, and they would collect his semen because like whatever religion they have, it does something. They weren't trying to get pregnant with it, but bro, honestly, that's kind of hot. See, but my cases, I've looked for cases. They're like we're men, we're forcefully raped by women. Those are like the only two I could find out. Right, because that's not really easy to do. You know what I'm saying? I know. You know, they say that like 50 to 60% of women, it's estimated, actually have like rape fantasies. Not that they would actually want to be raped, but like they that's true. So if that's true, I guess you could consider me one of those people as well. If what you're talking about is a thing that I could fit something. So if you look at what women masturbate, it's actually kind of weird. I was listening to the thing. So, for example, women tend to be, I'm talking on average, not all women, but they tend to masturbate to things like books or ideas as opposed to men who are like very visual. And like a lot of the books that I guess are fan favorites would be like Twilight, whatever the fuck, I don't know what the fuck that shit was. Or like 50 Shades of Grey stuff where it's like it is kind of 50 Shades of Grey isn't about sexual assault or rape though. It's no, I know it's about BDSM sex. I know. But there is the real life power dynamic there, where it's like a super wealthy guy, all of that shit, which conflicts this. But that is all like a exchange of power. I don't know anyone who actually want to be like their car or be drug into some creep. Because if you do, I'm the guy to do it. Oh my god, devil has spoken. Oh, Pepe. Oh, you're like a Pepe, dude. There is a whole thing that is CNC. Yes, and also it's like abduction play, and that is a thing. Oh yeah, I've heard about that. I only like like it when a woman's dominating. I'm not into the dominating women.
Like a drastic imagine you're in a relationship.
Like it's basically like role playing, but like you're role playing and you're taking
You're in a relationship and you kind of have a conversation like, hey, like maybe like at some point within the next week, I want you to like sneak out of the house and at some point like break into the house wearing like a ski mask and like conceal your identity and like what happens if I just see my wife? Would that count? If she agrees to it in advance. She did say it's kind of a fucking kidnap situation. Wait, like, what do you mean? If she was sober and she was like conscious and made that decision, it's not the same sort. It's not the same.
So let's say like you have like a wife and she just gets home from yoga, so this is what he did. But then all of a sudden somebody's dressed by the back in the back, and then you bend her. In the bathtub at night. No, then you bend her over and then you have her arm like behind your back and you're pinning her by her head, and then you savagely fuck her. Some women are like into that. That's just the thing.
Very vicious.
Well, I can condition. That's like what they like.
Strongly recommend a written contract before you BS, especially. So tonight, sometime in the next week, maybe even have it supervised. Sometime this week, you'll receive a warrant with a fucking roofing in it. Just FYI. Yeah, make sure you get that notarized. Could you imagine bringing that to the fucking courthouse and bringing it to a clerk and be like, hey, I need this contract signed or notarized, and they're reading it and they're like, wait, is this real? And your wife's there like, yep, it's real. Oh, that sucks.
Or if you're rich, you can just
Did I ever tell you the story? So, was it the shoulders glove? If I should say the story, you better not. Say the story. Say the story. Gotcha. So there were these older guys, and surprisingly they're Italian. They used to go to Cuba for vacations, and they had like second lives, you can say, whatever, not second life, just like their destination. Yeah, their destination girls. These guys, they would do this trip once a year. So they were doing these trips for like years, and then one time the wife said they would want to come with them. So I was say no, because it would be suspicious, so they took the wife, one of the guys. Again, these guys are now like they're 70s. So what they did was they gave their wife sleeping pills. They slept for almost 70-something hours for them to go out. So they thought it was going to last maybe 12 hours, like max of 24 hours. It lasted 70-something hours. They were free for almost 2 days to do whatever they wanted in Cuba. They got almost 3 days, 72 hours. I'm just saying, yeah, they were slept in for a and the way guys continuing to like give it to them. Like you have to wake up to this, you gotta wake up like to fucking drink. What the fuck did they last for that long? They just smiled and that's it. So yeah, they slept for 70-something hours. And they weren't suspicious, the wives. Pretty fucking wild. They had to be some kind of that sort of sucked.
what kind of hell are they?
It's alright, Ralphie. My dad will mix it on Florida man.
Do you know what a lot of women do?
His buddies were like, hey, want to meet us out and play some basketball at the park? He's like, yeah, I agree. So he goes up to the fucking park and he's sitting up there for about 20 minutes. Waiting on his buddies, they're already late. He's like, I guess we'll just run later. We do a story time. Fucking old, yeah, exactly, just run and then this old man comes over in like short shorts. He's like 65, 70 years old. An old man leans against his passenger door and says, how you doing? My dad's like, just with my buddies. He's like, ah, really? He's like, y'all gonna play some basketball? He's like, yeah. He's like, which team do we go around basketball? For a long time and stuff. And he's like, yeah. And then the old man ends up reaching down and pulling his thing out. And then it jumps
across the passenger seat, he slams the door against his face. He gets out and starts just drilling on the ground. And the cops end up showing up and they pull him off. And they're like, what the hell's going on? He's like, some man just fucking told me that, I got to sign your age and stuff. And I told him that I wasn't interested. He's like, dude, you're a fucking gay mark. He's like, that's all that goes on here. He's like, that's what we're like. He's like, motherfuckers. So we back to his buddies and buddies started knocking his ass off. But at least he didn't fucking train him. Basically, that was all. Yeah, go ahead and tell your stupid story. I don't have. No, go ahead. Give your stupid submission. I just think that's all women like. If I recall, a good chunk of women, there he goes. A good chunk of women, when they get raped, they have an orgasm. So I don't know. Yeah, you mind that? I don't know what everybody's saying, we're not taking this seriously. I don't know what it sounds like. Nobody getting actually raped has an orgasm. Well, that is, no, I can tell you, that's actually, I didn't tell you. I didn't tell you. I was making a joke about it, but the reality is that does happen to some women, and it's a lot more psychologically scarring for them because they view it as like their body, do you have any, body basically deceiving them. Yeah, rape survivors talk about this. That's again. It's one of the that's part of the trust me bro. No, if you're gonna say just do the trust me bro, no, then let Pepe do it so you can find out. Okay, I'm just getting a question. I'm gonna grok it. He's gonna go ahead. And that's fine. That may be the case.
Maria Baptist!
This is just like something that it is true. I don't mention. I barely ever. Every time that I've ever engaged in it, it's not necessarily. That's a bad choice of words. I'm making up. You can imagine it. Maybe one person said it. I find this hard to believe this would be a common. So, how common is it that women have climax? I'm getting the hit right now, real bad. An orgasm. Yeah. I don't know. So, but if you just ask you, drop this. I know. Grok would be the only one that's going to answer this. You have to do the Grok unhinged. It'll tell you how many times it's done. I was going to say, if you ask ChatGPT, it's going to be like, I'm turning you into be a law. I can't talk about such stuff. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to call the authority. What was the place woman? She sucked my ding dong. It says extracting prevalence data on orgasm during sexual response during something or other. It has the dots. During something or other. Which one are you using? Grok. Oh, Grok sucks. Whatever. It's the only one I have. ChatGPT isn't going to answer that. Yeah, well. Let me ask it. It's 5.6. Do they have to massage it or get differently? Yeah, but that's what you do to get them to climax. So when you do that, dark side of the moon. Oh yeah. That is dark. Okay, so here's the results. I'll just let you read it. It is true. But it says it's uncommon, but it happens in a minority of cases. Uncommon. Yeah, like I said, it's uncommon. He said it was common as fuck. He said that it. I do remember hearing. I do remember hearing that it was the reason it's talked about by survivors is that one of the things that you first of all getting raped is something. Some of them don't survive. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Like. Obviously, it's something that you generally will share with a partner, and it's something special, sex. And like, an orgasm is, obviously something you tie to somebody that you're intimate with. But then, like, when it happens to you during a rape, it that they perceive that as their body being fixated turn on them. Can you imagine if that was a problem, guys had to deal with that? It'd be so fucking easy. What problem? I don't know, like prom they made in the gym or something, and these women like pull up in a car, they're like, get in here, you piece of shit! And they like try to like pull me down, and then they treat me.
So I'll tell you something really interesting. I think there was an experiment. So there was a broad walking in New York. I think they're getting harassed by construction workers. You know, like they're whistling them and stuff like that. And like they're walking to comfort and they're continuing to harass the woman. So then there was a social experiment when the man did it to when the man were doing it to woman and the woman turns on and says, yeah, let's go right now, let's go fuck, let's do it. The man got lost, you don't know what to do back. Getting that ignorance, you know, like they continue to think they're powerful, but the woman actually agrees, hey, you want to bring out, let's go. She's grabbing his hand, he's confused. Then he feels so uncomfortable, he doesn't know what the fuck to do.
I don't get is like, I don't know what drives these women that they could be like conventionally attractive. Like it seems like they're generally still in their 20s, like they're teachers, and they get arrested for, you know, fucking like a 13-year-old or something, like multiple times. It's just like, I guess that's the weird part. Like, what drives these women to want to meet up, like to meet boys? It almost seems like it goes against their nature.
That's called a lottery. Like honestly, I see some guys like younger kids are getting like sexually assaulted, you could say, by their teachers. And you wouldn't press charges.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. It's like, I understand why it makes women feel a certain way, like an older teacher, like a male teacher. First of all, men have a problem with underage girls being doing something sexual with an underage girl that we have with vice versa. Like I think, like if I was a teenage boy, I would not be traumatized whatsoever. Like it's just silly. Well, I guess you have rules for a reason.
Bought and paid for. Check. Bought and paid for. Check.
Women are just weird. Why did these women that are conventionally attracted in their 20s fuck with like 13 and 14-year-old boys? You hear about it like at least a couple times in one. Like, oh, we already know the answer. They're pigs.
Because all people have some fucked up shit, okay? And you behave like them.
I don't when it comes to sexuality, I feel like men
You have no idea. I just heard that I can't even repeat the conversation. You know, you have no idea. You
what kind of shit is she into?
You think that we sit around and talk. She's so sweet.
Yeah.
Listen, talk about your friends. Talk about what you do. Talk about what you think that you're not living this life that you really don't. Okay? Just do it.
Sure, no, but the difference between men and women is that women are definitely more
This is
selective
gonna
in
work.
general. There's usually something more than just physical.
A lot of times women have a partner and don't even know it.
Yeah, so I think it's what's up there. I agree.
No, there is never all
Who's your friend? Oh, that makes sense. When you receive like a meme, like it shows like what you think sluts look like, and then it shows a picture of like, basically women who look like hookers, and then it says what sluts really look like. It's a bunch of women in nurses' uniforms. I actually agree with that.
They're just very body sense. It can become. They almost talk about it clinically, and again, I'm generalizing. I'm talking about women that are in medicine. It can be very clinical.
The same nothing. Nothing.